The latest season of Ultraman has come to a close, so it's time to take a look back and discuss Ultraman Blazar in its entirety. Hello everyone, it's thomasjujube, and be sure to comment your thoughts below on Ultraman Blazar. Let me know if you watched it subbed or dubbed or anything else about the show you want to mention. If you haven't seen Blazar, I am going to link in the description an official playlist of all 25 episodes here on YouTube, available with multi-language subtitles and an English dub. And you don't need to know anything about any other Ultraman season to understand it. It's completely standalone. It's a great jumping off point for the franchise. If you're interested, I will leave that all in the description if you don't want to get spoiled in this video. So if you've been following the channel for a while, you'll know that I have reviewed Jeed and Orb, and I have talked a bit about Zet. I did a episode 1 review of Zet, Trigger, and Decker, but I never did season reviews of those. Zet was just kind of a weird thing to review for me. Trigger and Decker, I did not finish. Nothing against those shows, I just didn't end up finishing them as they were airing. So when this show came out, I was like, I'll do the season 1 review, but I was like, hey, I could do the short reviews, and it gave me an excuse to keep up. So if you want to hear my thoughts on any particular episode, be sure to check those out as well. And because I haven't really watched any of the seasons live in quite a while, this show kind of rekindled my love for the Ultraman franchise in a way, but it's also very different to the seasons I have seen. So part of it was like a fascination with the base premise, or not really the premise, but kind of like just the ideas present. They like stripped themselves down to the fundamentals of Ultraman. I have yet to see any of the Showa and Heisei seasons in full, but I feel like this is kind of what they would feel like in the concept, where since I've only seen New Gen, and they all have like the big green screen transformation sequences and the characters in a room, and then during the fights they're like yelling in a white void and they're using the toys and showing them off and all that. We don't have that here. When Gento transforms into Blazar, he's always in the environment. When we don't get to see like him in Blazar, or like hear his inner thoughts, or see him physically speaking his inner thoughts, it's just Blazar, and I really love that. Like, it really feels like he has transformed into Blazar, and like they kind of try to emphasize this otherworldly aspect with Blazar, like he is an alien. I really got that vibe with this season, because whenever Gento turns into the alien form, we don't get to experience Gento anymore until the last episode, but that's what like makes it impactful. Like, only the little things we get are like seeing the toy, but we don't see his face at all. We don't see him talk, except for like a couple moments, and it makes it so unique and interesting, and like really immersive compared to the last few fights. Like, it really does feel like we're watching Gento lose himself, not in a bad way, but lose himself and become Blazar. And again, this stuff is, I kind of wouldn't make a big deal of it if I was watching like, again, a Showa or Heisei season, because that's just expected of those seasons. But it's the fact that like it's the latest season of Ultraman in this era of the green screen room and the big transformations and stuff. We just get this very stripped down kind of season like that, which makes it all the more fascinating to me. There's even stuff where like he doesn't have the beam. He doesn't have I don't know what. Well, I was doing this because he has the spear attack, which at first I was like, I kind of wish he had a beam. But then after watching the whole show, like, I do like the beam weapon is kind of a cool touch. It adds again to like this is a little bit of a different Ultraman. But then he does the beam in the finale, and it's like incredible. Like, obviously Ultraman doing the beam is still awesome, but having his final episode super attack be just the classic Ultraman maneuver is incredibly amazing. This does also create one of my problems with the season, but I'm kind of split on this as a problem. I would have liked like more toys, honestly. I like the toys in Tokusatsu, right? I don't need toy, but when we get a character using a new toy or weapon, it is cool, and they always, when they can tie it into the story, which Blazar does do, it is satisfying. It's just kind of boring to me. Like, we have mini arcs for each of the power-ups, and they're awesome, but then it's kind of underwhelming when the power-up is just this big CG blade that he throws, or just a sword. The sword is cool, but like if the sword gave him a form, that would have been cooler. And like, I love the final form. The far drawn armor is awesome, but it's just like an armor piece. It looks more like a side form change or like a mid-season form change rather than like a final form kind of change. So that's where it's like, I like how they don't emphasize the toys as much, but they still have toys. So it would have been cooler if they did something more unique with the toys. Apparently this is also because they decided to go all in on the kaiju department, and for like the first time in a few years they've created an entirely new cast of original monsters. They're not pulling back or pulling out older suits to fight. They did like once, I think. And that's cool, but like if I go to watch a show called Ultraman Blazar, seeing a new kaiju is cool, and I will talk about that a bit later, and there are standout kaiju, but it's kind of like, I'd rather like a suit budget go to Blazar or something. Obviously in an ideal world they would have all new kaiju and a bunch of new Ultraman suits for Blazar, the main character, but if they have to like sacrifice Ultraman for the sake of kaiju, it's just kind of weird to me. Or even like I would have really liked an Earth Godon Blazar fusion form. There's no other way to put, I don't know where I put that in this discussion of topics, but I think that would have been really badass. Like if we have kaiju robot, we have Blazar, they're trying to emphasize selling the kaiju and Ultraman stuff, just put it together. Or even like, I guess, like they sold, I think, all of these kaiju as toys, so that was kind of why they were marketing them so much. Like, look, new kaiju, buy kaiju toy. Although I feel like if you're like new Ultraman toy, that's more interesting to children. I don't know, I feel like as a child I'd be more interested in buying the Ultraman toy than a monster toy. But anyways, maybe if they tried to incorporate more of the monsters into Blazar's like form, or give him form changes based off the monsters. Like I think Ultraman Victory, no, he does, I'm not thinking, I know he does, he has attacks based on kaiju, like I think at least like an King tail and like a King Joe gun, stuff like that. They could have done that with Blazar, since apparently he was like supposed to be a hunter or something. It could have been like after he hunts the Earth kaiju, next episode he pulls out Tenagular's like pincer thing. But speaking of Earth Godon, Scarred overall really worked for me in the season. So let's start with Earth Godon. I think he's awesome. I love Ultra Defense teams that have their own mecha to fight the kaiju, because that is infinitely more interesting to me when they have just jets. I love the design of him. I think a big dinosaur kaiju friend is incredibly cute, but also fun and badass. I do think it's kind of funny that since Blazar doesn't get like these frequent form changes, Earth Godon is the one who gets frequent form changes. Not frequent, but like he gets mod 2 and mod 3, and then he even gets mod 4, so he gets like a end of season final form kind of thing, and he's like the human kaiju robot. So that's kind of where it's like, okay, if we don't give Ultraman forms, give me Earth Godon forms, I do think that's a bit of fun. I do have like just kind of nitpicks with him, with his usage in the season, because like most of the fights he's in, he just loses, because this is a world where kaiju are so frequent apparently. And Scarred is brand new, of course, but it just makes me wonder, like, they have a big robot now, and they still can't deal with them effectively. Like, it's just kind of a weird thing. I'm like, I feel like this should be easier to take care of them, right? I'm actually gonna... I moved the placement of my microphone. I don't know why I didn't do that in the first place. That was kind of ugly. I apologize. He should have at least, like, he has a couple wins, but I don't think... It's not frequent enough for me to be like... Yeah, I believe they could deal with kaiju effectively in this world. It just feels off to me. Also, the whole thing with the AI voice. Like, for me, it only felt like it was useful in the finale to communicate with the V99, and he helps Emmy a bit. But, like, it just kind of feels out of nowhere. Like, the introduction of it just feels random. It's like, why? So then when it becomes very important in the finale, it's like, oh, okay. For a while, I felt like the only interesting thing about the AI Earth Godon voice was that the same week we have him talking, the same voice is in Super Sentai as Douglas D4DJ terrorizing, I don't know, whatever they do in King Oger now. I'm not really sure. As for the actual Scarred, the main characters, I had a lot of fun with them. I think I like all of them, honestly. They all have really great focus episodes, and I like how they all kind of tie in later on. Teruaki, probably my least favorite, because a lot of the time it just feels like I'm the vice captain, blah, 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 outside of, like, his one focus episode. I like Henri's personality. Like, I do, the one scene where she, like, screams in Earth Garden because Teruaki admits she's a bad shot is really funny, but, like, all her focus episodes, I was kind of saying, like, it feels like they have a focus episode about Henri, but it's not really about her. Like, she's just doing things in it. Other things are happening, and Henri's just our focus character for those events. And it kind of feels like they underutilized her. I don't really have much to say about Yasunobu, but he's definitely, like, my favorite of those three, just because he's, like, a silly goober. Gives Urgard a nickname. He named their little van. I think that's really funny. He's a really fun guy. And, like, the washing machine episode is a lot of fun. I really just like Scarred, like, as a group. All 5 of them. Because they all just, like, they're just goofy. Like, the little side plot where they all have to, like, put on, play a skit for, like, kaiju informativeness or something like that. Even, like, there's, like, a little 5-second scene where, like, there's leftovers in the fridge, or, like, Gento forgets to turn off the camera. And it's, like, they're obviously here just for, like, humor, or those moments are obviously there just for, like, humor, but it, like, really humanizes the group of them and, like, grounds them. Like, they don't just feel like they're there to fight kaiju. Like, they do feel like real co-workers or friends of sorts, thanks to those scenes. And it also then, like, makes the show feel a bit grounded. Like, because I know people initially thought it was going to be kind of a darker or more mature Ultraman season, and that's definitely not the case with moments like these. But with moments like these, it makes the show feel more, like, again, more realistic in a sense. Not in the sense of, like, oh, people are dying, but realistic in the sense of, like, oh, these feel like real people that are just kind of, like, screwing around at work. Their work just happens to be a big dinosaur. Gento and Emi are the 2 Scarred members that are definitely the most prominent, and as a result, they kind of end up being my favorite. Gento, I feel like it goes without saying, he's just a cool character. It is refreshing to have an older actor be the lead of a modern toku. I really enjoyed his overarching story, learning more about Blazar and, like, how the 2 of them are linked physically and mentally, how they're similar, all that stuff. I also really love the family aspect. Like, it humanizes him in a great way, but also, like, we don't really get protagonists with a wife and daughter. Or, sorry, where did I pull daughter out of? Wife and son in modern toku. So it was really great to have this little aspect of Gento, which, like, yeah, he is fighting for, I mean, most toku protagonists do not fight for themselves, but he's fighting for something that most toku protagonists aren't fighting for. And I did really like the way they were used occasionally. I feel like at the very least they should have been introduced in, like, episode 1 or something. They don't get introduced for a long time, but we were told about them. I wish they did more with Gento in relation, or not really in relation to Scarred, because he definitely feels like a captain of Scarred and stuff, and that's really cool. I mean, he really just does the classic Ultraman protagonist thing, like, guys, I'm gonna go run off into the corner, and oh my gosh, where did Gento go? The only time it really, like, was super impactful was in the finale, where he's like, Teruaki, you're in charge now, I'm on strict bed rest. But he's lying, so he can realistically become Blazar. And just a quick aside, that is probably, like, my favorite moment in the show, maybe. Like, just the fact, like, Gento tears up, realizing he can fight with Blazar. Teruaki can be like, oh, he's crying because he can't fight or something. I thought that was a really cool scene. I did just want to... It seems like Ultraman doesn't like having their protagonists reveal their identity to the entire team anymore. I don't know why. But, like, this feels like it would have been the place to do that. Like, hey guys, I'm in charge. I'm also Blazar, so we're gonna work with Blazar. Like, it feels like there was a lot of interesting things you could do with him as Blazar, but they don't really do that. Speaking of Blazar, he's not like a member of Scarred, but he's the main character, and he's really great. He's a silly cat or a gremlin. I don't know. There's many definitions I've seen for Blazar, and I think they're all great. It feels like, to me, like a hybrid between the Ultraman shows where the protagonist is the Ultraman and the shows where the protagonist is an Ultraman host. because because he's mute, essentially. So he's not actively talking to Gento. Like, he's not a vocal character in terms of dialogue. So usually it's just Gento. Like, Gento is just doing things or fighting the kaiju or something. But Blazar is communicating with him in a way. I don't know how to describe it. Like, he feels like a character who's there and affecting things, but he also does not feel like the same way Zet feels like a character, essentially. He's a different kind of Ultraman as a character, and I do really like that. Also, as I mentioned earlier, I think my favorite scene of the show, where, like, Blazar, the climax of their relationship is Blazar actually speaking words, and it's Gento's catchphrase, is so cool. And as I'm saying this, I realize that I think the reason this is so impactful is the same way that Soundwave talking in Transformers Prime is impactful in that show. Now that I'm sitting here, Blazar might be my favorite character, actually, but I think of the humans, Emmy was the standout to me, because I wasn't really expecting her to be, like, the secondary protagonist. I thought it would just be Gento and Blazar, and then as the show progresses, it's like, wait, Emmy's doing a lot of plot stuff. She's, like, actively searching for answers about V99, coming into conflict with the GGF authorities, hunting down aliens, getting into normal fights with normal people. And it's kind of what makes the season feel so different from a lot of the other recent ones, in my opinion, since, like, the main storyline here, it's like espionage and, like, a thriller and, like, dig information, like a spy kind of thing amidst Ultraman action, and it's not the main character doing all this, it's the female protagonist. So I think that's really awesome, and I also like that it's not just like, oh, Emmy's a badass, so she's gonna do all this. There's an emotional core to her struggle, since she's trying to find the cause of her father's disappearance. So you want to see her succeed, not just, you know, to defeat V99, I guess, the GGF, but because it will be cathartic for her. Speaking of the V99 plotline, just the existence of that plotline and Emmy's relation to it is kind of what makes her stand out for me, because I thought this was a really cool story. Like, we're not aware of it until halfway through the show. At first, Bazinga is just the kaiju that's in the premiere, and the wormhole event is Gento and Blazar's first contact, and V99 is some old GGF mystery that created the Cum monster. But only after we get Gibalga, it's revealed that he's the second wave, where Bazinga was the first wave, which is something we knew about the whole time, but they didn't really explain what that meant. Then the wormhole event where Blazar came from is actually the V99 event, and everything is related to V99 now. We have to find out what V99 is. So I thought that was really cool. It also made V99 a really interesting antagonist, because they're always just looming in the background. Like, they play into the episodic nature of the show, because we don't need them, and we don't need to actively see, like, V99 plotting. That's part of the mystery. We don't know what they are, but the knowledge they're out there, and that any kaiju that we encounter at any point could be one of theirs is kind of scary. I also love the twist at the end, even if it was kind of obvious, that they're just acting in self-defense because of V99, like that was a mistake, and they were defeated kind of through peaceful means. Like, the invasion was defeated through peaceful means, but there was still this big scary kaiju they sent that we had to defeat, which is kind of funny. They're like, hey, please don't invade us, V99. Okay, we'll leave, but you could all still die because of the kaiju we've sent. I do wish we got more about them, though. Like, we introduced this whole new alien race in Ultraman, and we see, like, their spacecraft. They have the ability to create kaiju, and they can send it through space using wormholes, and we don't learn their names. We don't even, like, know what they look like, and that's a little, like, the story of Blazar doesn't really need it, but that's just kind of something I want to see. That, like, I don't know why you would introduce all this and then we don't really get to learn more about it. So because the V99 aren't the real villains, it's the old dude from Kamen Rider Double, the Terror Dopant. Once again, it's a unique idea to have in this modern day of Ultraman, because he's not a dude summoning kaiju or just straight up aliens or something like that. He's a normal man, and because he was a dick like 25 years ago, he accidentally almost destroys the entirety of Earth via alien invasion. That's also what makes Emmy so compelling as a protagonist, because Gento and Blazar, like, they can't fight the GGF. That's a man on the ground. They can't squish him. So it's up to Emmy, since her whole thing is being on the ground, and she's the one who can... I mean, I'm sure Gento could maybe convince him to not kill the aliens, but he's Blazar, so it's up to Emmy to do that. So I think that's really cool. She saves half of the day. I guess the most important part... Well, no, the big kaiju is also pretty important. I do think it's really fascinating and really cool that the main villain of this season is a government official. It is not... I mean, we have aliens, of course. It's not just him, but at the end of the day, he is kind of the main threat, so I do like that. But even if Blazar wasn't focusing on the GGF or the alien V99, like, it still had really fun episodic storylines, and that's kind of why I kept coming back to watch the show, because it's either I get this cool mystery and plotline development, or I get a really nice, digestible, quick, like, really enjoyable 22 episode little plotline. Some of the standouts to me were the Swordsman Kaiju episode, Gavadon, the Ultra Q Kaiju, the Flying Kaiju episodes. They're all, like, awesome little self-contained storylines that I clearly still do remember long after their appearances. Seeing all the episodic kaiju come back in the finale and help save the Earth by eating the Vader bombs, that was really satisfying. So, like, I maybe was, like, I'm a little too harsh maybe on, like, I don't want all these new kaiju, because they did kind of cook with a lot of these kaiju episodes and designs and etc. So I think that was really cool. I think some creators of Blazar said that they wanted this season to be like a new beginning for Ultraman, as it breaks free from the traditions of the last few seasons, but it reinterprets some older ones and creates a show that feels fresh in today's landscape of tokusatsu, but it still maintains the spirit of Ultraman, and I thought that was really great. I had a lot of fun with Ultraman Blazar. I do think Geed and Orb, I enjoyed them definitely a little bit more, but for sure I definitely enjoyed Blazar. Do not take it on the bottom here to be anything bad. I did want to point out, since I'm sure someone's going to ask, that yes, I am doing a season review without the prehistory segment, and I'm doing it face cam style. Basically, the quick story, I did go more in depth in this on Patreon, so make sure to check that out if you want full information on that. But essentially, Ultraman videos don't perform very well on this channel. All of the short reviews were like the least watched short reviews compared to Kamen Rider and Sentai, so I didn't want to go through working on that whole segment, since sometimes it's not very enjoyable for me to do, and I know a lot of people aren't going to watch this video anyways, but I still wanted to complete my short review saga with Blazar, and I know people do watch these videos, so I did make this for my Ultraman fans that do watch my Ultraman videos, but I wanted to switch things up, test out this style, which is a little bit easier for me to do, a little bit faster to do, since this Ultraman review will not work the same as the Rider and Sentai ones do. So I'm also curious, let me know if you like this kind of style of video, because I might use it to review the Blazar movie when that comes out, and if we're able to see it. If I even review the movie, we'll have to see. Or I might use it to review some other Ultraman seasons. So once again, your feedback is much requested, but of course, let me know your thoughts on Ultraman Blazar as a season in the comment section. Check out that Patreon or subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you next time.